The 5th generation My Little Pony movie is going to be released soon. This week, in fact, ushering in a new era of pastel-coloured talking horses for a Netflix generation and the masses of bronies who have stuck around to see how it is. So what better to do in anticipation than paying a visit to the final emblematic piece of main canon media from Gen 4 that I have not yet covered on this channel. During Season 9's midterm hiatus, Rainbow Roadtrip was dropped, taking on the visual style of the 2017 feature film, which of course got a lot of people, including myself, excited. It was meant to tide fans over for the second half of that climactic season, so you did not lose momentum and it would keep you occupied until the show returned. However, it went by barely even registering a blip on the radar for many in the fandom, which is actually quite surprising given how loved the film's animation quality was. Which made me ask a very simple question. Were many simply just conserving their hype and energy for that latter half of the season, or when this came round, were they just not really bothered about it? Either way, it's time for me now to look over this 1-hour special and judge whether it reaches the heights expected of Frenchman's Magic or breaks under the strain of its extra girth. This is a video that has been long requested by quite a few people, and I apologise that it's taken this long for it to come to fruition. I hope it's worth the wait. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a returning edition of Pones N Stuff. This special offered up a brand new location and characters with a plot and moral focused on social connectivity and resurrecting town pride, which sounds like something quite enticing. However, it stumbled at the first hurdle, providing a dry, stale and uninteresting Equestria Girls style pop ditty to highlight our characters in a very meagre and forgettable intro before sleepwalking into this special's biggest issues: its lack of uniqueness, and an awareness and protracted use of its elongated runtime to damage the pacing. The case for the former is that this special doesn't feel new when its story is the combined result of a three-way between Season 5's The Cutie Map and Made in Manhattan and Season 3's The Crystal Empire. Our heroines go to a before-unknown town in crisis thanks to the actions of its leader-in-chief, realising that a breakdown in community spirit needs to be repaired, whilst those inhabitants are reluctant to comply despite the main six's best efforts to do so. Season 9 already had issues concerning unoriginality in some of its plots and overall narratives, so to see it on a larger platform is immensely disappointing, especially if it becomes so staunchly apparent to a long-time viewer without too much foreshadowing and subtlety. The latter is quite remarkable in context, given that this special has 60 minutes to work with, opposed to the standard 22 in most normal episodes, even more so than the 44 minutes that have been given to season-ending and beginning two-parters, which should be more than enough time to fill it with something with enough ebbs and flows to be exciting, befitting of its above all others stature. However, it takes roughly 20 of those minutes, akin to a whole standard episode including adverts, to establish the location, most of the characters, and the central narrative, with very little of consequence outside an unsettling aura and a deluge of charming yet mildly irritating ponka comedy to feign attempts at titillating stimulus. There's also no central antagonist to push our heroines to do much either, throwing this show's traditional narrative convention out of the window. It turns out the real bad guy here is society itself. Ooh, scary. Familiarity with reality aside, with no direct threat, this special feels content to saunter, canter, and drag its way kicking and screaming through understanding the grievances of Hope Hollow's residents, complimenting us with cumbersome stereotypes and cliches, further limiting the role of our main heroines into their flanderized professional and social roles, alongside the vast exposition as to how it literally lost its colour. Not the most thrilling to watch unfold given such barren context. Due to this core plot thread, the animation, made to replicate the fantastical movie's offerings, was purposely restricted, sapped of all vibrancy on purpose. Why go out of the way to offer up this splendid visual aperitif to hyper special for the masses if you are rarely going to exploit it for viewer pleasure? It's quite a perplexing decision that handicaps the horse before it had a chance to gallop, further diminishing returns as it went on. You felt apathy fester as mostly dislikable characters' initial impressions force up excuses to act the way they did as the story plods along to a conclusion and plot twist that is so easily foreseeable that little excitement can be brought to the surface. More a failing of stylistic decisions encumbering the structural ones, as the dramatic cuts to the designated ad breaks disrupted what little momentum it was propelling, lacking the punch expected and highlighting the special's lack of urgency to anyone watching. The score has glimpses of quality, as does the Ingram musical number standards, to try and artificially inflate and add it back in, but they feel contrived vocally or aren't the resounding bounties that one would have come to expect from this show, or, in the case of the former, are rarely given a lofty platform to expose themselves as the lack of colour and character direction limits their audible scope. Hell, we return to a Season 1 classic of Ponka singing at random, something I thought we'd left behind in the past. All of this combined as one leaves you watching with a cantankerous taste in one's mouth that this special is wasting its potential right in front of you, which would be depressing if it wasn't entirely out of gas just yet. There was something in the tank keeping the engine running. From the surface at least, this special is devoid of a lot of the things that me and many others became a fan of this show for, and it feels like a very lazy, contractually obliged checkbox ticking exercise by Hasbro, who basically thought, oh, the audience are too dumb and stupid to even care that we're just phoning this in, because Gen 5 is going to be a year around the corner or two, so we'd rather put our attention into that instead. And while you can feel a little bit depressed and downtrodden at just how handicapping creatively this was, the people who sat behind Hasbro putting this together had more passion for it than I think we'd ever realise. Noticing this flagrant disservice, they went about their way to ensure that it satisfied viewers and armchair fans alike, at least if you knew where to look for it. And when you did find it, boy howdy were you in for a surprise. Hope Hollow's status as a new location, combined with its substantial ensemble of new characters, initially looked like it was going to be hard to juggle with for the special from the outset, because Friendship is Magic on a few occasions in the past has struggled with this. In this particular instance, however, it was where the extended runtime had unanticipated benefits. Due to all of these characters being separated amongst a core number of the main 6, the slower pace allowed them all to have ample time to elaborate on their personal struggles and endear themselves with the viewer after some very rocky introductions. Petunia was a spirited joy that made my heart flutter. Kerfuffle's driven frustration and Torque's apathetic hard shell were slowly worn away thanks to the honest and generous perseverance of Clothes Horse and Background Pony to show their core heartwarming tendencies and earnest goodwill. The Barrel Twins' obnoxious reluctance relented to earnest cute idolization and adept learning under Rainbow's stern yet welcoming tutelage. Even the crusted former Manhattanites felt this way after Fluttershy and Ponka wore them down. Same with Twilight and Sunny Skies, ensuring his obstinate and awkward personality was rewarded with a sweet romantic subplot that made you wish for his and the town's overall success upon seeing the genuine natures of all of them on show. Through a combination of patience and a sheer force of will, these folks dripping with their warming Minnesotan accents had their coarse as rock initial personalities gradually broken and chipped away. Their verbiage soothed and sanded their imperfections down to where they could be understood and related to with comfort and ease, especially as Applejack, Rainbow and Ponka showed character growth from over the course of the series through continuity and lore expansion to establish those relationships with them and to subsequently help their respective charges towards repairing their town's social backbone, which was surprisingly buoyant despite all of the characters' vocal ranges and voice acting being more restrained than I would have liked, feeling phoned in on occasion by the main 6 themselves especially, dampening the unfurling positivity of the writing and the characters as a whole, but it is definitely still present in ways that I honestly was not anticipating, having gone into it feeling so disappointed. And while I did mention the negatives of the opening salvo and Ingram's 2 musical numbers earlier, that criticism of the former was justified, whilst the latter's was predominantly due to the dour and overly long expositional trundle that was the end of the rainbow. Living in Colour, on the other hand, was the type of triumphant ending song that I have come to expect from this show, swelling with pomp and allowing other characters to sing verses, coming together with such delight in the chorus, making such a protracted special end on a note that at some points I thought it didn't initially deserve to, but still has all the symbolic bells and whistles to make anyone smile as it finally got to utilise the animation's heft that had been denied for so long to really make it shine. As for the score, its moments, as noted, were mostly contained to the colour arriving back into the fold as it had been purposely removed to heighten the bleakness of the whole story, but actively did work against it to prove it had some merit. However, when it did arrive, oh boy, you noticed it, and it made it so nice to witness that blossoming colour in triumphant ways, especially as Twilight's sporadic use of her minimal dosed magic ensured that it pulled the visual category out of the gutter even briefly, which is further enabled thanks to the new character's unique and elaborate designs standing out despite being mired in pale shades of dour grey. The thematic and moral subtext surrounding this entire special, however, is where all inhibitions of negativity are evaporated, echoing the division of then and surprisingly still relevant societal ills some 2 years after the special aired. I know it's quite worrying when you actually put your mind to it, as a lack of connection splintered all around them thanks to insular, single-minded and egotistical thinking, as thankfully this special does something that not a lot of people really do, acknowledge the importance of the roles in the world that many believe are beneath them, and showcasing the willpower and spirit of those who keep what most of us take for granted up and running, whilst also highlighting the hallowed fable of moving from one broken community to another and not being willing to learn from those mistakes as it falls apart. All of this is capped off as a reminder of just how great those subdued roles are in keeping a community going, and the importance of what that same community spirit can be when it comes together to celebrate what makes it special and those of us who inevitably make up this damn thing. While it may have been foreshadowable from all angles due to the dialogue and plot relevance centered upon it, this thematic sledgehammer offers up a variety of understated and blunt ways of expressing it, giving the special that was lacking on a lot of fronts the heart it needed to power through. Kids watching can learn a lot from examples of self-confidence, self-assurance in one's ability through hard work, and that their role in society should and will be appreciated no matter how small if you put in the effort to make sure people notice, and how you'll never understand the true worth and value of someone's experiences unless both sides are open and willing to talk about them, and how they can help each other as a result of that, which is something that we really do not see enough of nowadays. It's this kind of symbolic writing and hefty narrative framing that ensures that its message will not lose potency over time, as it remains very noticeably pertinent. It ensured that by the end of this special, despite its problems, I felt happy and content, not bitter and angry as I was early on, realizing that I was immensely thankful for what it had offered, as without it, we'd be looking at something that would be much worse overall if this was not inserted violently, but necessarily so. All in all, a special like Rainbow Roadtrip is one that is extremely difficult to quantify and evaluate given the rollercoaster of affairs that are contained within it. It had an animation facelift, but little of the audiovisual benefits that would usually come along with it, an irksome story and banal character setups that fractured emotions early on, but steadily opened itself up to expose inherent qualities that were impossible to deny by its conclusion. It was overly long and had very little to substantiate itself with, but found its footing as the plot gradually unfurled. It was a powerful message that was sadly shoved down your throat with little subtlety, despite its thematic subtext seamlessly flowing through all of it. Most of its positives were lost on a casual viewing, whilst critically, those negatives were heightened, yet easily dampened by those moments I've already noted, as well as dialogue, visual humour and continuity that struck a chord, whilst having new characters calm the senses, and meaning and subtext that came through to show me that it really wasn't doom and gloom after all. It's more robust than I had anticipated, but still shows that it wasn't entirely well thought through enough to where it can wholly benefit from being able to stand competently after defying those expectations. The strength of its core themes of community, social recognition, and openness with one another, bolstered by a nearly flawless moral burgeoning through its cavernous empty halls, ensured that a slow, visually lacking, and audibly stagnant 1 hour of horse cartoon came through with a smile on its face against all the odds, spitting in the wind when it came to narrative convention in the process, delivering a heartwarming but flawed showcase that can be looked back on with some fondness despite an uphill struggle being present. Yes, it felt like it lasted forever, was a Frankenstein's monster of reused plots, lacked in striking animation for large stretches, and had lost its steam before rushing to make amends, but I can't say it was worthless. Not after it surprised me with some resolute depth and lovable characters that thankfully saved its blushes from what could have been a lackluster embarrassment in different hands. The score that I'm about to give may be contentious, but when you buff out the necessary positives and sand off the negatives, in the context of all that has been made in this show's run, it may be more understandable. Overall, Rainbow Roadtrip scored a total of 11 out of 25, which is a C-. You may not agree with this, but I feel it's a fair reflection given the circumstances. In closing, this special is a frank autopsy on the state of friendship is magic right as it reached death's door. Yes, it had a frankly fantastic idea at the helm. Put them in the animation style that made them look out and out the best they ever did, give them a new location, give them some new characters to interact with, and a moral that actually has some validity in socio-realism of the modern day. This is actually quite nice. But in execution, with creative limitations, it really didn't take advantage of all that. And you feel quite sorry for it at the end of the day. But thankfully, once you scratch the surface, dig through the undergrowth and find some fertile soil beneath it, it's a reminder of just what this show has always been a beacon for: representation, understanding, and great life lessons to be taught to the next generation without really talking down to them too much about it. And that's something that I feel, even though this show is, from a target audience that isn't mine, I can at least appreciate. And when I look at this, knowing that I had the patience to sit through its problems and find those positives, I'm really glad that I took the time to really look it dead in the eye and say, damn, way to surprise me out of left field, Rainbow Roadtrip. And thankfully it reached the below average median that I've pretty much given the entire series consistently, even surpassing this point. It's weird that the final Gen 4 thing I ever look at got pretty much what I expected, but bloody hell, it was a really difficult journey to get there, and I'm somewhat relieved that this is the outcome we got. And with that, I can turn off the light and welcome us in to Gen 5. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Pones N Stuff is back, and it will return with the Gen 5 movie review probably within the next month, and with subsequent specials and probably a series coming after it, you can expect more. So like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so when they arrive in your sub feed, YouTube will not be a massive dick about it, and we will all have a good time embracing something new together. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people watching, this is the CC Network, and I will see you all next time.